Well, hey everybody, it is Record Time with Chris, or rather Tall Tales with Chris, episode 17. And yeah, you saw that Soundgarden record I was just holding up. That's my old copy of Ultra Mega OK from when I was a kid. And we'll be talking about Soundgarden a little bit later. But for now, I just want to give you a heads up. So what's in this episode? I got the usual, colored vinyl and limited pressing things that I'm going to show you. But a big chunk of the middle is going to be unboxing of this new Jethro Tull songs from the Wood box set. We'll go all through that, and I have a prog-related giveaway that I'll be doing then. But there's a bunch of other stuff that I want to get into first. So, yeah, Soundgarden. If you were around like in the late 80s, like I was, it kind of felt like something new was happening. I was in my teens, and maybe all teenagers feel this way if they're aware of what's happening with music. But there were all these bands that had totally different ways of doing music, and it was a really diverse group. When you think of like REM, Fishbone, Primus, L7, Mary's Danish, 10,000 Maniacs, and Soundgarden dropped right into that. This came out in 1989, so they were, one of the earlier college rock bands to get a major label deal. And it really, Jane's Addiction, you put in that same group, but it felt like something new was happening. I mean, there was metal, a lot of heavy metal in their sound, and in Jane's Addictions as well, and some of the funk metal kind of had some of that, but it felt so different than like Van Halen or Rat, the 80s metal bands, or Van Halen started in the 70s, but you know what I'm saying. This just felt like our stuff. So it's hard, and I think that Chris Cornell is maybe the first from one of those major bands to die, since Kurt Cobain did in the 90s. And there's a connection there, because we hear that Chris Cornell committed suicide, and his family, I don't know. I'm filming this just Friday, the day after we all found out, so things will probably have changed by the time you've heard this, but there's talk that he committed suicide, and of course Kurt Cobain did. But the difference, I think, is that, Cobain, when he did it, well, anyway, just from my own perspective, I remember when that happened, and because I was, in my 20s, then early 20s, like a slacker, which is same thing as a millennial, but we didn't have cell phones. And I remember that, well, we didn't get it. Like my peer group didn't really understand it. And I think that probably suicide or depression, anxiety, mental illness, all those things were much less, they weren't talked about as much. So I don't think people were, as understanding maybe as I hope they are now. But maybe that's just because I've had a couple decades, and that whole, you got to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes thing, I think is true. We really, when somebody does something that we totally can't understand, I think it's like we just don't, there's a perspective that we don't get. And I think that's true of obviously of people who are struggling with some kind of mental illness that like, I don't know, I'm just thinking that probably feeling suicidal or being like clinical depression is probably way different than being really, really sad. It's got to be a whole different thing. And so I guess we just need to remember when we're talking about this, we should just remember that we probably don't understand it unless we've experienced it or something like it. So, but one of the good things about music, to circle back to a recent release, is some people do a really nice job, really great job of expressing how they're feeling. And sometimes when you go into the like world of outsider music or private press stuff, you get people who express themselves so well that it can become quite uncomfortable to listen to. And one of those artists who I think really, you get it, you could tell the guy was in pain when he recorded. His name is Gary Wilson, and he's probably best known for his song 6.4 equals Makeout. That there's like rumors that Beck covered it, and he's actually mentioned in Where It's At. But in the late 70s, he recorded this album called You Think You Really Know Me. And, it's a challenging listen. It's a challenging listen. I mean, the music's actually quite nice, but you can tell from the lyrics that he's having a tough time of it. And then he has there are places on the album where the music just skews way off into these sound collages, and he talks about, he like repeats what he's thinking over and over and over, and it's really oppressive. And I think, if you haven't, I don't know, I think he's trying to explain what he feels like and illustrate it. So I was really excited to see that there's a live album that was just released, and this stuff was recorded in 2016. So almost 30 years after his most famous album, there's this live album. And what I think is really awesome about it, and, not just like packaging wise, because you get a free CD with it, and the CD has the color artwork, but what I think is awesome about it is that he's doing some of that same material, but the crowd response is immense. That he seems like a really obscure guy to me, and like that live album is an edition of 500 copies, but anyhow, he's it's just great that 30 years later he's like recognized by some people, and it's a big gig. A lot of people there. You can hear the cheers and everything. And I mean, it's in Brooklyn. I think it's in Brooklyn where it was recorded. Anyhow, it's a good success for him. And I should just remind everybody that this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this Bad Brains album was just reissued a couple weeks ago, just a few weeks ago, and it is on this nice green vinyl. And Bad Brains was kind of part of that same thing, because they were taking hardcore, had a really different approach to hardcore, and they seemed like some of that mixing up that was going on in the late 80s. But anyhow, this green vinyl edition, some of the money from that goes to help the JED Foundation, which is a mental health awareness charity, and maybe some other charities. Anyway, it's a good time to be thinking about this stuff. So I guess if you want to make yourself, music makes you feel better. So if you're broken up about Soundgarden, you probably liked Bad Brains back in the day, and this album came out like 10 years ago originally. So maybe you don't have it, but it sounds quite a lot like the old stuff you remember. So it's an excuse to do something good. Anyhow, another charity thing. You probably heard a little bit about this around Record Store Day, but we're just doing ours now. So Trent Reznor and his collaborators signed a copy of the Before the Flood soundtrack, and we are auctioning this off, a silent auction, through the comments on our website. So if you go to that collectible vinyl page, which I know you probably go to anyway, a couple times a day, just look for this cover, and you can go in there and bid to win this. It's a little over $100 right now, last I checked, so it's a great thing. Now let's move on to Tull. Okay, so Songs from the Wood. They've been doing a great job with this Jethro Tull box set reissue series, and Songs from the Wood being possibly my favorite of those albums. And I know it's not near anybody, not too many other people's favorite, but it's one of definitely my favorite after Thick as a Brick. So from the mid 70s on, this is my favorite one. And this is the album where they basically invented folk metal. And but I'm going to start by telling you what's not in the box set. I mean, it's three CDs. No, sorry, yes, 3 CDs and a DVD. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, there's 2 DVDs. My bad. Two DVDs, and since I watched both of them last night, you'd figure. Anyhow, it's quite comprehensive, but there's something that's not on there. First of all, they put the sticker on the actual on the actual thing, not on the shrink wrap. So part of the cover art is obscured. Oh wait, actually it was obscured by the nice price sticker on my original copy. So, well, it's just trees back there anyhow, but, well, it is what it is. Also, if you have this, which is the early 2000s remaster, one of the bonus tracks that are on this are not on it. One of them with Beltane, which is which was a proposed B-side to a single from their next album. It's of course not on here. I assume they're gonna, when they do Heavy Horses box, it'll be back on there. And there's a live version of Velvet Green. It's like a BBC thing, and a couple live versions of Velvet Green on here, but I don't think it's the same one. And I'm just guessing that probably there wasn't room on the Heavy Horses remaster for Beltane because the other songs that were kind of floating around at the same time are on there. So another thing that's not here on the box set is it's not enormous and killing space on your shelf. Remember in the 80s, if you were around the 80s, all the box sets, whether they were CD or records, were enormous like this. So you could, I mean, in one sense it was cool because you could put it in your record rack, because like when this came out, I think a lot of people had more records than CDs, but there's only 3 CDs in this thing, and you can see it's like 3 times the volume, and only 2.5, but 40% of the material, or 60% of the music. So I guess but there is one good thing about boxes like this, because this is where I throw all my tape stubs. So, oh, this is awesome. This is from the Crest of the Nave tour. I bought the program. Oh yeah, here it is. There's a crossword puzzle in here that Ian Anderson wrote. The prize was his flute. And let's see, one across. Respiratory apparatus for dog and picker. You probably know what that is. Let's see. It's another one. There's some really good ones in here. Why can't I find them? Well, anyway, they're really good. Oh, the sum total of the primitive instinctive forces in an individual subserving the pleasure-pain principle. And that's a little bit too obscure for me. There is, where's the one? Oh, 13 across. Negative performers of Close to the Edge. And it's 2 letters. Well, anyhow, that was cool. So I use it to store memorabilia in, and I'll show you. Remember, if you weren't around then, there's like this tray with these things, and then underneath it, it's just really inefficient, but it's kind of the best they had at the time. Anyway, there's probably a ton of ticket stubs underneath there, and the actual book for it. Yeah, well, I'm making a mess. Anyhow, that's how it used to be. So these are really nice, especially since there's a whole, you could have a whole bookshelf of these, maybe put them in with your DVDs and Blu-rays. So, all right, songs from the wood. For those of you who, you're all record store day people, so you probably remember Black Friday. There was the Ring Out Solstice Bells 45, 7-inch EP. I don't remember what speed it ran at. So was to tip us off that this was coming. And the unreleased stuff that are on that is on here. The released stuff on there, it's the same mixes that were on here. This contains new stereo and 5.1 mixes of the album, and like the singles and some outtakes. Those are all done by Steven Wilson, who, when he's working on a progressive rock band whose music he grew up listening to, obviously Tull, he does a fantastic job of keeping and it's the same way on here, he keeps the it, he keeps the essence of what was great about the album, but expands it to surround sound. He's just super gifted that way, and he can do it without making it sound weird or not like it originally did. And I think it's just because he, you know, like me, listened to a ton of Tull in high school, I would guess. So, but there also there's a whole concert from 1977. It's 2 hours long, so that's CDs 2 and 3 have that. There is so the one DVD has the high resolution mixes and the surround sound and a flat transfer of the original mix, and I guess that just means unmastered. A lot of the prog box sets are doing that these days, and I don't know if that's maybe so you can master it yourself if you want. You know, mastering's done for a reason, and you know, stuff benefits from it. So I don't usually listen to those very much. And the second DVD has the whole concert. Now, what's great about it is we have probably some stills from it. Anyway, it's if you've never seen Jethro Tull live, Ian Anderson is really weird on stage. I mean, he makes these big bug-eyed things and he jumps around, and it's really interesting to watch. And he has a great sense of humor. He's hysterical. In fact, on the concert on this, he comes out and he pretends to be the opening act. He says he's the opening act and he gives some fake name. Anyway, but the live material was not mixed by Steven Wilson. You also can choose from 5.1 or stereo. Oh, there's some tracks from the original album in quad, by the way, original vintage quad mixes. But anyway, so Jack Sizik. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, even though I've been listening to his stuff for a long time. He's kind of, it seems like he's the go-to guy. If you can't get Steven Wilson to do a project, he's the guy you go to. So he's done, but as a guitar player, he's kind of part of the extended King Crimson family. Like he's in this group 21st Century Schizoid Band, which is really fun. He's playing Robert Fripp's parts, and then everybody else in the group were King Crimson alums. And they do a really nice job of interpreting these. But probably, where he really, really impressed me is on the CD, Neil's Heavy Concept album. Neil from the Young Ones, and he's the guitar player on there. And everybody else are like these are like from the Canterbury scene, and he keeps up with them. Funny thing about this also, the drummers, one drummer used to be in Spooky Tooth, and another drummer ended up in Porcupine Tree, where, playing with Steven Wilson later. So small world in the progressive rock scene. So anyhow, his live mixes are weird. Like the surround sound ones seem very strange to me, just because it's almost, the front is almost mono. There's not much on the sides. It's almost all coming out of the center speaker. And, so the center channel has Ian Anderson's voice, whatever guitar or whatever it is he's playing, flute. And, the bass and the drums, where bass is also right in the middle of the drums, or just spread out a little bit. Martin Barr's guitar is a little bit on the side. And then the keyboards end up in the back. So it's a weird listen. Anyhow, it's a great concert though, and it's really fun to watch. Really, really fun to watch. So well, I guess I already said what I think about Steven Wilson's mixes with the original album. I think they're great. And there's this nice long, I'll show you how thick it is. This is booklet. That's all text. It's just like the other ones where there's an enormous thing. Ian Anderson's comments are always hysterical. They're really funny. And, there are all these weird, they're really good pictures. Oh, and so while you're listening to the surround sound mix of the album, there's just a slideshow that repeats. And it's these images here, some of these promo images that, just would have been done at the time. But anyway, this is cool. It's got the lyrics. course, it's got some sheet music in there, lots of stories from a bunch of different people. It's a really, this is one of my favorite pictures. It's just crazy. So, yeah, and I guess if you're, so remember earlier when I said that this is where they invented folk metal? Well, what had happened was that this is right after Ian Anderson moved to like rural Scotland on the coast, but this is before he opened the salmon farm, fishery, and so this is when he started. So a lot of the things that he writes about on here, like the big song "Ring Out Solstice Bells," obviously the pagan influence there, but "Jack in the Green" is like the thing that keeps the plants alive over the winter. "Cup of Wonder," there's just all this stuff on there. Even the songs from the wood. It's a really woodsy sounding thing, but there are like late 70s synthesizers in there in addition to the usual organ. It's, well, anyhow, it's not like and then 5 years later they invent pirate metal. So maybe that heavy Grammy for heavy metal and hard rock didn't seem so stupid after all. No, it was a bad idea. Anyhow, at least Dean Anderson thinks he didn't deserve it. So I'll let him be the judge of that. But this is awesome. This is really good. Like if this is one of those things, I guess I'd say if you think you might like it, you definitely would. And I believe there's a regular single disc version if you just want the new mix on stereo. And they usually follow these up with vinyl versions of the new mixes, so that's something else to look forward to. And this is like that really flimsy 80s vinyl, so maybe I'll need to pick that up to have a better copy. Okay, now, giveaway. So last week or the week before, I was talking about this Ayreon album, and I have a copy to give away. This is a 2-disc, like prog metal, rock opera. If you're familiar with their music, it's a lot like their other albums, just as good. You'll love it. And if you haven't kept up, if you're watching this because of the Tull and you haven't kept up with modern, like contemporary trends in prog, you should check them out. I mean, pull them up on a streaming service or something, or just put down in the notes that you would like to win this, and I'll pick somebody in a few days and get in touch. So let me move some things out of the way here. Now, there's some other stuff I want to show you still. I'm not quite done. So, don't think this is out yet. The SACD is, so we know that Audio Fidelity has released the Leon Russell self-titled album, and they're also going to do it on vinyl, and it is gorgeous. I think you can see that it's a really slick, nice and slick cover, and it's almost like I actually washed my hands before taking it out of the plastic. You wouldn't touch the record with greasy hands anyway, but I don't even want to touch the cover. It's just beautifully printed. It's so great, and this is on blue vinyl, and it's a different shade of blue than you usually see. It's dark, so it's translucent. I guess they would call it transparent, but it's a nice rich blue, and it's a nice rich sounding album. Of course, this is the one where a bunch of people, he's got help from people like a couple Beatles, Clapton's on there, I think some of the people who ended up in like doing percussion for stuff like the Traveling Wilburys, some of those people are in there. It is see, this is nice, the album, it doesn't even say on here. Oh, no, he dedicates it to, so George Harrison, Ringo Starr, Charlie Watts, the Stones, Bill Wyman, Stones, Eric Clapton, Klaus Voormann, Plastic Ono Band, and the guy who drew Revolver's cover, Jim Gordon. Let's see. Oh, Steve Winwood, Jim Horn, Mr. and Mrs. Bramlett. I guess that's Delaney and Bonnie. So, and there's a bunch of other people. Oh, Mary Clayton and Joe Cocker. So, they're just thanked. Anyway, I don't know if they're it's a great album. It's a great album, you know. Just want to bring it to your attention that it's coming out. If you're a fan of it, you know, either the SACD or the record will be the best sounding version of that you're probably ever going to get. Now, something weird and fun. You can see if I wobbled it by, you probably just saw the Modern Harmonic sticker there. So, a week ago, they released this crazy record. So, folk songs for the 21st century. So, Sheldon Allman, I don't know who he is, but the producer is David Axelrod. And it's not the David Axelrod who was part of Barack Obama's advisors group. No, this is the David Axelrod, the producer who just died this February, I think. And somehow, even though he did this crazy record in the late 50s, managed to work his way and get respected into the hip-hop community, which just shows how open people can be and how music can make connections between different generations and everything. It is fantastic. So what the heck is this thing? Well, you know, I guess it's retro futurist. So the music is, there's like just some strummy strum kind of early 60s, late 50s folk stuff, kind of like cowboy songs. But the particular cowboy song I'm thinking about is it's like a relationship between a computer and a humanoid. It's called Univac and the Humanoid. I think that's the one, or maybe it's called Space Opera. Anyway, first cut is more like a jump blues, radioactive mama, get bug me all night long, right? You know, and there's one in there, Crawl Out. Side 2 starts with Crawl Out through the Fallout. That's you know, come hang out with me kind of romantic thing. You got Free Fall, but anyway, there's one called X square plus 2. Guy's trying to explain how much he loves somebody and all he can't quite put into words how he feels, so he just uses a formula. Now, it is on this kind of kryptonite-y looking, you know, toxic looking vinyl, but that's because of just the white backing on the jacket. It's actually, you know, transparent. It's really cool, and you know, great sticker there too. And oh, this is just to remind me. So pay attention to your record news, social media feeds, preferably ours, but whatever it is, because I can tell you Tuesday, somebody is planning to announce something very exciting. One of those kind of mini record store day things where you have a bunch of you know, limited edition colors or things that won't be released, but there's going to be some really nice reissues announced Tuesday. That's the plan, I hear, to get you through the summer. Real exciting stuff. They shared the list with me, but I wasn't allowed to share it with anybody, so I looked at it and said, oh, that's awesome, and then I deleted the email. So I don't even remember what's on it, so I actually know as much about it as you do. Well, the only thing I know that you don't is who's behind it. But you'll find out soon. I think it's exciting. And yeah, so go listen to, you know, if you like Soundgarden or Audio Slave, go Chris Cornell's solo albums, go listen to those, or listen to something else that's awesome. And I'll see you around for the next one. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.